Welcome to Meeples on Meeples, episode 98. I'm Brian.
I'm Travis.
I'm Ian.
Before we start our review this week, we'd like to invite you to subscribe to us, please, on YouTube and Twitter, and we also have a Facebook page you can follow. And we'd like to take time to thank you for watching this video. Normally, this is where we do the rules section of our video, but because this is such a large game and there's a lot going on in it, we've done that in a separate video, and we invite you to go ahead and watch that, please.
So first, we're going to start in straight on likes and dislikes.
Who wants to go first?
Oh,
what do you like about it, Ian?
I like the dice rolling. It was
Dice rolling?
spot on.
The dice are different for each faction, depending on how many hits they have, their likelihood of fleeing or not, which is very cool and thematic for the armies, which is
so
cool.
it's not just you playing an army of a different color, it's you playing an army that does perform differently. Either number of dice, both number of dice and faces on those dice.
Absolutely. I'm not going to lie, when I first opened it up, I saw the miniatures. They're, I think, probably 1 centimeter tall. I don't know how many millimeters that equals out to. They might be like 6 to 8 millimeter miniatures. But they're very detailed for what they are. And every army is a different sculpt.
Yeah, so it's not just your generic Risk minis where it's all the same guy in a different color. Like, you can actually tell on the board easily.
Yeah, even if you were colorblind, you can look at the sculpts and be like, oh, the spear guy is the blue, the 2 axes is red.
Yeah, no, I just enjoyed the fact that when I resolved my hit, it happened right away. We moved forward the actions through the different with phases with your block, your color. That moves smoothly. We moved through the rounds very smoothly, and everything kind of paced itself correctly.
Absolutely. What do you guys think of the map?
I think it's a very cool map. I mean,
I know what you're going to compare it to, but go ahead.
Some might say it looks kind of like Risk, and it, as far as a territory acquisition,
nice way of saying it.
I mean, you're fighting over territory. It has a lot of similar elements to Risk, but this is fun to play. I did like how it's asymmetrical, team-based asymmetrical. So you're working with somebody as you're doing things, and you're also working against 2 people that function completely different from how you do it. The Englishmen are defenders, and they're trying to bolster cities to resist an attack, and the Vikings are just trying to spearhead as much as they can and take over territory. And I just think that makes it fun versus everybody taking a turn trying to eliminate everybody on the map, where it's just attrition based.
No, there's a lot of randomness, and I'll point out some of the randomness that I'm curious how you guys feel about it. I'm personally okay with it. I'll go up front saying this. There's randomness in who gets to go first. You always start with the black army going first, the black Vikings, because they have to invade and bring somebody onto the map. But then after that, you randomly draw. So 2 Viking players can go back to back. 2 English players could go back to back. You never know which army is going to go next. There's randomness whenever the English are attacked and they're defending a shire with a city in it. They flip a fjord card, which is the peasants join, and you never know how many are going to be on there. And of course, the dice themselves add some randomness. I personally am okay with that, but what do you guys feel about randomness when you're trying to do a heavy strategic battle game?
No, it was well done to the point that I had enough decisions for myself, and then the randomness on top of it, which mixes it up. You can't 100% go in to every single round or every single move thinking that that's going to happen, because you still have to, even when I attack, you're pulling your peasants.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a random act.
Absolutely.
You can kind of maybe count cards a little bit with the fact that you know that a few 5s have already been drawn, and you can kind of maybe gauge it a little bit, but it's still going to be a random draw.
Do you guys think that there's enough ways to mitigate the randomness?
I'd like a couple more. I mean, we had a lot of rounds. We were English players on the last playthrough, and there was so many times where my units just run straight off the board, 3 battles in a row.
The flea dice, yeah.
And it does add to it. You can't expect that just because you have more units, you automatically, will have an advantage. But there are, a few cards that are granted. We played with the basic setup ones. I know there are advanced
cards 1
ones.
through 12. There's 20 cards in each deck, but you only play with 12.
Yeah, so you could build it to fit your particular playstyle, which I'm sure would adjust the game quite a bit. But as far as the base ones, a lot of it's up to just luck of the dice on what you do. There are a few cards that can really change things, but there's maybe 2 that really adjust combat.
Well, there's a couple ways I think that you can mitigate that randomness. One is when you refill your pools from your guys who have fleeing previously.
Yeah, I mean, that helps. Yeah.
So you get to choose where they go within. There's rules on where you can place them or how you can place them. So you can kind of reinforce properly in expectation of where you think you're going to be attacked from next. But you do also have some of those defense cards where you can play on the other team's side.
Yeah.
So if you know, like, okay, they're going to roll through, but we'll get the first attack, as we attack instead of the defender going first. Right? There's different cards that can, I guess, help you, like I said, mitigate that randomness. There's cards you can play outside of your turn and things which kind of help you control the battle a little bit.
But there is a lot of random to this game, though. I mean,
Absolutely.
Even the cards you hold are randomly picked.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a built stack, but still, you can maybe gauge it. But if you played it a few times, you can kind of do that a bit more, I guess.
True. Do you guys feel that it is a balanced game? I played it more than either of you, but is that a like or a dislike? Did you feel like not at all balanced?
No,
or?
I think it was fair. I mean, everything was kind of balanced to a point where you.
I mean, we went late in the game this last round.
Yeah.
It was a tight battle.
Yeah, and it went down to like the very last turn. It was either they were going to win or we were going to win, which I think is how a game should be. It shouldn't be like, well, in 2 turns I already know I'm going to win, so now I'm just jumping around the board for style
I don't think
points.
there's any runaway leader. Like, I don't think you ever look and be like, we're totally screwed. The first time we played, we kind of felt that way as the English, but in all the games I played, it's been literally a 50-50. 50% of the time, Vikings have won. 50% of the time, the English have won.
And I think
I've
as
won as
far
both
as-
armies myself.
Right, but is the 50-50 shot based on randomness, or was it based on how they played?
I think how it was played. Because
Okay.
I've seen people totally biff it as the English, and I've personally won as the English. Now, I think it's harder to win as the English, but that's kind of part of the challenge. I actually liked playing as the English.
Because you think that the Vikings.
They get a steamroll in and it's all attacking. So
I know, I like that.
I like, yeah,
I mean-
I like that it's just a complete package. There's some randomness that you can control. It seems really well balanced. Anything else we want to talk about on the likes and dislikes before we move
I
on?
think the flow of the game, as far as, there's going to be some highs and lows, because at the beginning, the Vikings, like, their starting cards are always going to be a little bit more powerful versus the units that the English have on the board. So as the Vikings kind of power in and then taper off a little bit and kind of have a couple of spikes throughout the game, the English generally kind of have that slow build. So the Vikings tend to be a little up and down, and the English kind of level that out as far as getting units that replace themselves on the board and having a little bit better defenses with the feared. I wish I could remember how that's
My
actually pronounced,
question to
I think it's just
the levelness is, I mean, we had a few rounds where we rolled badly and you did too.
But I think
if we
it kind of
we-
evened out because of that.
Right, but had that not happened, it would that would have completely changed the game flow and who won it,
Possibly,
and
yeah.
how, and we would have hit points, way ahead of where we needed to and things of that nature. So it very well could get out of hand based on how much randomness there is, and not so much the.
That's true. That's
Mitigating
the
factors,
dice
whatever.
definitely.
Well, I mean, I guess that's a dice game.
That's the whole attack. Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, I personally think the likes far outweigh the dislikes.
Oh, yeah.
For me.
Yes, I think so too.
Now let's talk strategy. I enjoyed the points where you had to enter into the battle, where the board itself, the map is laid out where they have a few inlet points that actually stretch far into the boundaries, and that gives you kind of some edges and some points that you can focus in on.
There are a lot of entrance points for the Vikings, more than it looks initially. Absolutely.
Right, and it brings you further inland than you would assume, because right here you get a couple points that are more towards the outside, but then you can come way into the peninsula and come in, and then you're attacking into, I don't know, what's this province, whatever that is.
The Middle Anglia.
Yep, and so you can get as far as that, and then just move right in as you need to.
I think as the Vikings, it's kind of finding ways you can create, I guess, like choke points and kind of pinch off the English armies. So coming in maybe from down south and north and working your way in sometimes works. I've tried coming in from the north and going south, and I was able to win as the Vikings, but it seemed harder. I think it would have been smarter if the English were fighting on multiple battlefronts and spread thinner.
Yeah, I just thought that it would be because you guys can replenish, but the Vikings can only take in what they bring in. So then it almost felt like we had to stay together, or at least more cohesive unit, because we could get we attack stronger, but yet once we're out, we're out.
True. What do you think are some good strategies?
I think the one we just played, I liked, coming into the north, it's easier. There's less troops on the board. Whereas if you go to the south, there's a lot more troops, but those are also
this is the
large
strongholds for the English for
that's
sure.
That's where the English will get a lot of new units. They'll replenish a lot more. They'll get 2s and 3s versus the 1s that are generally up on the top. But it's kind of a gamble, because you could just lose all steam, and then your first turn is kind of just.
But if which they did. If you can take some of those big cities that replenish 3 people, two
then
blue and 1
it
green,
hamstrings the English
it
player.
really made the English hard to win. Now we did win, but it was really I got to point that out.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it was hard. Like it did not look good for a while there.
And there's one other strategy that I think is really fun. When we played the Vikings, the red have that kind of downside of generally having fewer units on the board.
And they're the first to die.
They're
They
the first to
sacrifice
die.
themselves.
They don't have as many units when you have a new horde coming in. But there are a couple of cards that'll say like, oh, you convert, a bunch some of the
It's 2 of the blue guys.
two of the other
you
ones
can convert 'em.
into people. But it was leaving units behind as you went. I thought a better strategy is keeping your red units in the main army to do a lot of the attacking and kind of leaving the blacks. Like, yeah, they're vulnerable to those conversion cards, but I haven't seen that come up as being like, oh, we lost because of that one.
We did
Conversion.
lose because of your conversion.
Well, yeah, but that wasn't.
that helped us get that one extra city at
Yeah,
the
no.
end. It was
But
tight.
you spread out. That was like 6 different locations.
Well, I think
versus one.
we were game planning for that card specifically, but it didn't happen until the very end, which is really when you're going to be spread thin anyway. So
Yeah.
it really was detrimental at the end. If we had seen that more in the beginning, I think we planned appropriately for that.
I think the one way they play differently for sure, a strategy for the English, is you have to sometimes just kind of sacrifice some of your turns and not go on the offensive,
And just-
but you just have to be a defensive and yeah, so I've got to move some people on my turn, but let's fortify some of these cities, and of course make sure we keep the cities that are going to be able to create new soldiers for us rather than the cities that aren't that aren't really helpful. But it's defense is the English,
Yeah, and I believe that you guys can step off your
and keep control.
and then just move away from it, even though it's technically not. It's completely open for somebody just to walk on, but it worked really well at the end, especially at the end.
Yeah, we were able to abandon cities knowing that you guys didn't have another turn, so there's no way you could take them. Well, then we don't need to leave anybody on this city. Which
Right,
was
or
pretty
I
slick.
think you could have even done that ahead of time, and we still probably couldn't make the moves to actually get there because you're limited to 4 spaces on any given shot.
Yeah.
There's nothing above that, so really you could game plan that way too.
Yeah. We could probably talk strategy for for all night, but there's definitely a lot of strategy, and I think this is the kind of game where the better player or the more experienced player will win a lot more often than, like we said, there is a lot of luck, but I think there's enough to it that if you're an experienced player,
You'll know
beat
what to
a newbie
prioritize.
most of the time. Yep, you'll see what's coming.
Okay, now it's time for our reviews. This game, I would give it a solid 7.5, just because there's a lot of randomness to it, and sometimes as a Viking or as another player, you don't really get to play. Sometimes you're voided in the turn because of what you have the ability to roll, and you kind of have to share around the dice, especially as the Englishman, and that that can kind of put a damper on your night. But overall, it's pretty solid. There's a lot to take in though, and there's a lot going on at any one time. So there's that aspect of it too, which kind of is a little bit more of a downfall. But it's pretty solid of a game. Definitely worth buying.
That's it. Okay.
Should I do more?
No, that's okay. I'm actually not that much higher, to be honest. I'm an 8, a solid 8. I like it a lot. I do not like Risk. I don't like what people call online the dudes on a map game. But I love dice. I like some randomness. I like strategy. The components are beautiful. We already covered all of that. It's a close, tight game. It feels really well balanced. And another thing I like is usually when you have a game like this, it says, you could play 2-player or 3 or 4-player, but really everybody knows, no, you only play a 2-player because it's one side against another, and that 4-player, you're just 2 people splitting one person's actions. And I personally did not feel like that was the case here. When Travis and I were partners this last game, if there's blue and green and I'm blue, it's the green's turn. If he moves an army that has my guys, he rolls his dice, I roll my dice. As long as you're good partners, we talked and we discussed what should move, and we strategized and we worked together, and I always felt like I was involved on both our turns. You always care when the other army's going, so you want to see where they're going on the map, and then you get to roll dice to, when you're being attacked as defense. Yeah. So I felt this game actually does play. It's not just a 2-player game that you can stretch out to make more than 2 players. Sure. I think it plays really well with 2 and 4. I haven't tried it 3-player 1 against 2, but I assume it would work.
So it's just like any relationship, communication.
Yeah, as long as you're communicating, you're always rolling dice, you're always involved. But we've covered everything else. I think it's beautiful components. The Viking theme is really cool, and I love miniatures.
I'm probably going to be a little on the lower side. I gave it probably 7.
Okay.
I'm also not a huge fan of, risk style games, territory acquisition, having bunches of units and throwing, a lot of, luck based die. I did like it. I mean, as far as not liking those kind of games, I still gave it a 7. I think it looks very cool. I like the idea that it is historically accurate. I think that actually plays really well.
And in the rulebook, they talk about some of the characters and some of the things going on, like historic accuracy.
Cards have actually points of history on it.
Yeah, so it's very cool. I mean, it can play to a lot of, like, as a learning game, you can learn that, through these time periods, this stuff happened. Maybe not in the exact same way, but using the same historical figures. So I think that was very cool. I like the, once you get into it, the ability to craft your own deck of cards. I think that would be really cool. I like the asymmetrical build of both sides and both factions within each side. I think are very cool. So it does a lot of things right. The only thing that kind of missed for me a little bit was a lot of random components on it. Random hands, random dice, random reinforcements, random turn order. So
I like that.
It's a lot of it for me, and you can't control a lot of it. So sometimes you're just like, and all my guys run away. Have a great battle. I am no longer here. But overall, it's still a pretty awesome game. I mean, if you like, territory war game kind of stuff, I would pick it up definitely.
All right. Well, there you have it. An overall very positive review. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time to see what we've been playing.